when you think about Patrick Macnee, many of you will think about the Avengers, because that show created a new sense and a new meaning to the word sophistication and style. And certainly this man embodies and absolutely is the definitive sophisticated. But he is a man who has worked extensively in theater, in films, in all sorts of television programs. He also has done recorded books on tape. He's an author. He's a very interesting gentleman, and I hope you will give a very warm Screen Actors Guild welcome to Mr. Patrick Macnee.
People used to think that this was something that I needed, and I believe 25 years ago I did, to refresh me during some such session as this. It is now empty and dry, and on the front is written, D. Macnee, that was my father, 1914.
Oh, my goodness.
He carried it with him throughout the whole war. He was in the cavalry, the Yorkshire Dragoons, and every single member of the whole damn lot were killed except for him. And he kept this close to his ass.
Well, welcome. Welcome very much. That brings a whole new meaning to the word cover your ass, doesn't it? It's a whole different thing. Whoops, better.
I have to admit, though, and it seems quite extraordinary, and I believe only lasted for 3 or 4 months, they were on horses in 1914. And then, of course, it turned to vehicles. But can you imagine all those years ago? Anyway, so let's talk.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You brought up your father. Could you talk a little bit about your family? Because you come from a very interesting family, from what I learned from your website.
Well, my father's name was, well, thank you for asking, my love. Do you?
What, come from an interesting family? Not nearly as interesting as yours.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Well, we could talk, but they're not here to hear about my family.
My father was called Shrimp Macnee. Shrimp, in my book, means a small person, or a small reptile, or a small whatever. Anyway, his name was Shrimp Macnee because he was small. And he had 3 enormous sisters of tremendous bulk, all unmarried. And my father was this tiny little shrimp at the end of it. And he was probably the best racehorse trainer, certainly in Great Britain, for a long, long time. And I remember him constantly. The word fetlocks and hocks means more to me than almost anything else. If I look at you, I don't look at your face, I look at your hocks. Now, a hock is not a fetlock, in case you thought it was. A hock is here, and a fetlock is there. And my father, this tiny man, come on, we go around and talk to the horses. We talk to the horses. Oh, ooh, ah. Ooh, ooh, ooh. And these fetlocks and these hocks became so important to me. What the horse looked like, his bloody great head up there, you know, in a whole box, and 25 others of them. All my father was interested in. Ooh. He's a lovely man, tiny man, Shrimp Macnee.
And you couldn't have a good racehorse that had bad hocks or
No, I'll tell you why. Because if those bloody, when you get from the start, which is when they have the most impetus, those back legs, if those hocks are not strong, if you know what I mean by a hock, even if you don't know what a fetlock is, a hock is a hock is a hock. Dong! And if you don't get dong off like that, you've lost.
Right, right, wow. So
I was brought up with that. That's the reason I know so much about it.
Absolutely. Do you still enjoy the horses? I mean, do you follow horse racing?
No, it's a long, long time. Must be 25, 30 years ago. I seem to remember having a wife somewhere at some time. who had so much to do with horses. And I remember the last I ever saw of her was a horse box and a horse, and her with about 6 horses. I know, anyway, she broke me completely. And when she went, fortunately, I've never seen a horse since.
That would put you off horses, wouldn't it?
It sure did.
Yeah.
If you spent 20, 40, 50,000, 25 years ago on horses for one's little wife to win at shows.
Yes.
Oh, very good jumper, good seat on a horse. Good seat.
Well, what was it like growing up in your household? I mean, this was a fairly aristocratic.
Yes, I'd never. Well,
household,
do you want to ask the complete question?
Pardon me?
Ask the complete question. Go on. sorry, I shouldn't have.
It's quite all right.
No, I know. I didn't want to interrupt
No,
you.
I was just
ask the complete question, if you would.
The complete question would be, what was it like growing up in your household? My understanding is it was a fairly, aristocratic kind of upbringing, and I'm interested because I wonder how that plays into the characters that you went on to play.
Do you always use the singular? You're assuming that I lived in a household. I lived in 8 households. And I had a bicycle. And I had a mother who lived with neither here nor there. It was a very rich woman. She was the heir to Dewar's whiskey, which is being the heir to a lot of money. And my mother and various other persons lived on the hill, Lambourne, Berkshire, on the hill, down the hill, in a little village called Lambourne, lived my tiny father, Shrimp. And he looked after these horses, all 75 of them, and he never won a race in 15 years.
Oh.
15 years, he never won a race. So eventually he went out of business. And that's the last I remember about him. What would you like to know?
I was kind of wondering what life in your households was like.
Yeah, that's better put.
Yeah,
well, I'll tell you what,
learning.
I've got a good answer to that,
Okay.
which is I had a bicycle. Mm-hmm. In other words, I spent as little time as possible in either of these households that you mentioned. The one on the hill with the big woman and a lot of others, mainly women, I would get on my bicycle and drive down to my little father and his 75 horses. And then I would bicycle up again. So I spent most of my time on the road. I didn't spend too much time in the households because the households were absolute depths of disgusting depravity. It depends what you mean by depravity, but I'm going to leave it at there.
Now, see... Now, here's where my upbringing comes into it.
Oh, now,
if I was a teenager and there was depravity to be had, I would have been there. I would have been checking it out.
Would you know what depravity meant? Do you know what it means now? I'll tell you what I think it means, going in the wrong orifice. No, everything should be straight and good.
So you just tried to avoid all the conflict and retreat to a world of your own?
Yes, on my bicycle and outside. And I had a little pony, and I had little animals, and I had acres and acres, and you could walk about a lot and down in the woods and meet little people. And mainly now my friends are animals, small animals. I've got a little dog about that size, and she's such a darling. She's 11 pound even, if you know what that means. That's a small doggy, not big.
So
she's at home in Palm Springs.
So growing up, did you spend a lot of time by yourself then? I mean, you're talking about being on the bicycle?
No, you see, growing up is an interesting phase. People have often asked me, what did you do when you left school? I said, I went to war. Yes, well, what did you do when you left school? I said, I went to war. Well, what do you mean? I said, well, I was 17 when I left school, and I was called up in the Navy. I went and fought the Germans in the Channel. Is that enough? Ooh, did you really? People are so ignorant, particularly historically speaking. Look back a little bit. I spent most of my time in my 18th year on the beach just offside Normandy there, trying to avoid getting shot. Oh, really? Oh, do you have to go into all that? I said, you did ask me what I did at 17. Have you ever seen, I'm liable to say, people's guts spilled out? No, we don't want to talk about that sort of thing. I said, well, if we could talk a little more, maybe the guts would stay in the bodies a little more.
There you go. You think that people just need to hold on to this romanticized vision of what war is? Is that why they don't want to hear the details, or?
Well, ask somebody a little closer than me. Just drop over to Iraq. You can get a plane anytime, and drop in there and see what they're doing.
You went to boarding school when you were young, right?
Yes, I was what's known as sent away. You know, I was sent away at the age of 5, and I came back at the age of 17. And I think I had some parents somewhere or other about. But yeah, I spent a lot of time at school. I learned a lot of bad habits.
Like what?
I'm not going to tell you at this point. People said, you mean to say you started sex when you were 6? I said, no, 7. How? I'm not going to tell you.
Is it in any of your books?
Well, a lot of people, no. A lot of people don't believe you can start sex that early, but you can. And it's the best time. The best time I ever had was between about 6 and 11. Very good. Very good. You only have to think of one member. And it works very well, very well.
Okay, now you've got this whole room depressed because everybody's past their peak, okay? Everybody's past their prime.
Past their peak. Well, we're all
Everyone's
peakers.
past their
Why
prime.
not? Yeah. Talk a little more.
So you were sent away to this boarding school, and
At the age of 5.
At the age of 5.
We had 2 years.
Yeah, go ahead. No.
Well, in those days, there were little old ladies, you know, used to teach you and flagellate you, if you know what the meaning of the word is.
Yeah.
Usually on the bare bottom and as often as possible, because it gave them enormous enjoyment to see, to see one's fundament. Anyway, that was the way we lived. They pretended it wasn't that, but that's what it was.
Yes.
Because they didn't do anything, but they liked to see it in case somebody might ask them one day, which was unlikely. Yeah.
Did they allow you to come home for holidays or weekends, or how did that
Well,
work? I mean,
they allowed me to come home from holidays, but my mother said no, she didn't want me home for the holidays. So I went to Cousin Peggy, who was a sadomasochist of the first order, and beat my cousin Josephine till she was black and blue every other day, which gave me a tremendous turn on.
Did the word incorrigible come up for you? You know, incorrigible.
I
come up
don't know what incorrigible means. It's too long for me.
When did you first find that you had an interest in drama or the theater? Did that happen while you were
that's a lovely question. When I was 5, and I did it at home in my drawing room, and I did a very famous, I'm sure my son will remember, written by a lovely man, I forget what it was. But yes, I went to a wonderful school called Summerfield's, Oxford, in which they did drama. I wish I could think of the names, Robin Darwin. I should be able to think of them. But we did plays so well, so young, so brilliantly, before the age of 10, 11, 12. I played Henry V at the age of 8. Somebody said, oh, don't be so silly, Patrick, as usual. I said, Christopher Lee, the tallest living actor, 6'8", promises that is true. Patrick Macnee played Henry V at the age of 8. How did he know? Because he was there, you idiot. He was at school with me when we were both 8. And if Christopher Lee, 6'8", said I played Henry V at the age of 8, I did.
There you go.
Yeah.
So how did that then evolve? I mean, did you...
How did what evolve?
Your interest in theater.
I thought you were going to say my interest in sex. Well,
you know,
certain friends of mine have done better in that area, but they're probably better equipped. But anyway, I don't know. But in terms of theater, due to one wonderful man called Bolton and another lovely man called Allington, and we just stood on the stage. I mean, to play Henry V at the age of 8 and Christopher Lee say I was good, I don't believe it. But on the other hand, we were so good in those days. We had nothing else. We didn't have television. We didn't have just radio. But we never listened to radio. But we acted. We got little people. We got up. We wanted to be someone else. We wanted to get away from this awful, flagellatory, horrible, beastly education. to do little things like little plays and things. That's how we did it.
And when you were finished with boarding school, you stayed there till you were 17, you said? Or no?
17, yes.
Yeah.
Then
And then
I
you went right into the service.
Yes, I went to the happy thing of killing as many Germans as I could in the morning.
How did that change you? I mean, I know
Well,
that's
one
a
saw
simplistic...
their bowels spill out all over the floor, which is not a good thing at the age of 17. Please, God, stop killing each other. Please, please, please. Oh, it's so awful. I saw this 80, I'm 81 now. All these years ago, I saw these guts spilling out, and there they go, oh, we're off to war, fight, 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 ha, 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 Iraq here, whoomp. Oh, look, it's disgusting. God, I hate war and violence and horror, and so do you. Let's all stop it.
When you got back from the war, how did you then make a transition?
With enormous difficulty. Nowadays, you have a psychologist, lie down, Patrick, now, tell me what to... They didn't do that then at all.
No,
you just had to get on with it, to get, well, you know, and you just had to get back to it, and wasn't easy, no. It's not easy one day, as I say, to spill someone's guts out, and the next day, hello, darling, are you all right? Is baby coming on all right? Oh, God, we got another baby. Oh, what am I going to do? Yeah. We were early. He's here, Rupert, and thank God he grew up to full thing. But at that time, I didn't think so.
Right. Did you find some refuge in the art of theater?
Almost totally. Oh, and almost totally I always have. You see, theater is such a wonderful thing, and so few people even know, although I'm sure you all do, what theater is. It literally is standing up, having a little scene, and doing it. And that's what I still love about the actor studio, about any of the teaching places. Let's stand up and do a little scene. I mean, so you take Tennessee Williams or Miller or whoever, it doesn't matter. In fact, the most important scene and the most unlikely character for you, an American Southerner or someone to say for me, and you just stand up there and do it. And that's communication. Why did this wonderful, great man, particularly Arthur Miller, write these wonderful scenes, these wonderful plays, if he didn't want them performed? He didn't want us to stand up here, and if you had a book and I had a book and we read one scene of Arthur Miller's, I hope we would have you enthralled. Yeah.
Well, you would, I wouldn't, but...
I don't believe it. If you say I wouldn't, you won't. You've got to say I will.
All right. So you went, where did you go to college?
We didn't have
Did you have university?
colleges. I never went to university. I wasn't allowed to go to university. I went and killed Germans instead. No, until then I went to a school called Eton, which is a school of enormous importance, distinction, and was sent there for reasons which I'm not going to display at this time. And I had probably about the best education, so when I went into the Navy, I became an officer right away and could be on the bridge and say, kill, kill, kill.
That stayed with you, that experience.
It
I mean,
would.
it's still so alive
Yes.
when you talk about this.
What do you remember when you were 18?
Yeah.
I remember getting on the bridge, going there, saying, right, off we go, and going out into the dark and off the north of France. And do you hear them?
Right.
E-boats. Are they going to port or to start? We won't catch them. Port, vet. Missed them again. German E-boats off the north coast of France. We were supposed to kill. We missed them. Every night, except for, I think, I know. The only time, this is not funny at all, but finally, and I wasn't on the boat, thank God, the only night we ever caught them, they all ran into each other by mistake off the north coast of France in the fog. And E-boat, up. Our boats were called motor torpedo boats. 4 of them, about 8 boats went up in smoke. Don't ever go to war if you can help it.
So, when you got back from war, you began to take the profession a little more seriously? Did you study? Did you begin to do theater?
No, not nearly as seriously. I, thank God, had sort of very good helpers. I had a wonderful man who was at Eton with me. I forget his name. He became one of the most famous drama critics in England. and he helped me on. And also, there was a lovely man who was the head of almost everything, and he fancied me inordinately because I was very pretty in those days. And so I got a lot of parts in a great many shows in the West End of London, and I became quite an important actor very quickly. Then I emigrated in that wonderful sadomasochistic way one has to Canada, which was a place very few people had heard of. Yeah. Where are you going? And I said, well, I'm going to Canada. Whereabouts in Canada? Montreal. I said, no, I'm going to Toronto. Toronto? Yeah. So I went to Toronto and became the first English movie star there. And they all said, oh, to be in England now that England's here. But anyway, that's beside the point.
What year was this?
1952, to be exact. And myself, Lorne Greene, the great Lorne Greene, and myself and Chris Plummer and Billy Shatner, a few other people. We were big, big stars in Canada. Nobody knew the hell. We all lived in the YMCA because we had no money. And, but we started Canadian, and we're very proud of it, too.
And you really helped the Canadian television business get off the ground.
Yeah. I did the first television show ever done there. Ever.
What was it?
I'll tell you in a moment. Do. Oh, God almighty. I'll remember it in a second.
Okay.
I mean, it's by a famous man, a lovely Frenchman. Anyway, on you go.
Was it like, did you do playhouses?
This is my trouble. I can't remember a thing like that, and yet I can remember doing it, and I can remember the type of the play, and it came from to Jean-Paul Sartre. Jean-Paul Sartre. Okay. Have you ever heard of Jean-Paul Sartre?
Yes, sir, I have.
Good, fine.
Okay.
Well, of course you have. I wouldn't even imply. Who would have implied that he'd never heard of Jean-Paul Sartre?
I'm just here to be your foil.
Not at all. He's got about 6 times more intellect than I could even start to have. On we go.
So what was it like working in television in those early days? I mean,
well, it was perfectly awful. I'll tell you why. Because there used to be an actor called David Green. He was a lovely man, lovely actor, and one of the greatest television directors ever. He won 8 Emmy Awards, I think. And, we started it literally by doing it as if we were doing it on the stage. So we were so bad. As I say, Lorne Greene played Othello, Barry Morse played Macbeth. We all played all these big parts hugely badly, which you've got to have the luxury of being allowed to do. Oh, to be, and you've got to get out and do it, and you haven't got to have somebody in front, which is too much the modern dissection is the word. It's like dissecting rabbits. Let people go on worse and fully and enjoyably and using everything. Yes, you say. And thank God, then we'll all be always doing some form of theater, somewhere, always.
So it's important to, if you're going to fail, you should fail grandly, eh?
Yeah, well now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I hope you heard every single word. I've just done, and I'm very proud of it, a thing by, I forget who the author is, but these audio tapes that you hear, we are enormously proud of doing and getting right, but we're proud, not proud. We are proud. One of the most important things in life to me now is pronouncing one's consonants. We are proud and glad to be going to gonorrhea, or whatever. You know what I mean? Let's hear every word.
Yes. Did you, was that part of your training? Diction and stage movement?
Do you know, I'll tell you when I first learned how to speak. You probably don't know how to speak because I didn't until I was 55, and I was taught it by a very, very distinguished actor who shall be nameless. But I should have learned it at the age of 20. The way that you learn to breathe is just above the pubic here. You fill in the air. You fill in the air. You see the air coming in, coming in. You then start again here. It's all in there. And you take another lot. And then you've breathed. But I didn't learn that till I was 55, and I learned it from a very, very famous actor on Broadway. And I did a play on Broadway called Sleuth for 2 or 3 years. Yes. And it was a great, great play, a lovely play. And the great thing about Sleuth was you couldn't have there were only 2 people in it. You could only have an interval of 5 minutes. If you had an interval of 6 minutes and the audience came back, they knew when the old man came on in the second half that it was the young man who'd been there in the first half. But if you had a 5-minute interval, they didn't guess. I played that at the Music Box Theatre on Broadway for nearly 3 years. And I'm very proud of it, incidentally, which is why I mentioned it.
I read somewhere that that was one of your favorite experiences.
Well, Sleuth is one of the greatest plays,
it's a beautiful
modern play, don't you think?
It is.
Yes,
it is.
It's incredible. But if it's badly played, it can be awful.
Yeah, yeah.
And Tony Schaffer, he didn't die too long ago, a couple of years ago. And Peter, of course, is still alive. Very fine, very fine. Well, much greater playwright than Tony, with Amadeus and everything else that he's written, you know. Peter Schaffer, still great, great playwright.
Did you find it challenging to be able to make a transition from the theater to television and film? And if so, what were those challenges?
I remember thank you for asking that. I remember first asking somebody who was pretty experienced, and by that time was a television producer, and he said, I said, what do I do now from the stage to going on to, do it just the same, you always do it, Patrick, but do it big, keep it big. And of course, in those days, you had to do that. And I came over to Canada, and there was a very distinguished director there. He said, do you have to do it so loud? And, well, I was told in England we had to have it loud because it's television and they're over there. And he said, well, no, I think because the camera's just here and the microphone's here. Mm. Oh, I said. But, I mean, there's an awful lot of misconception about the arts, isn't there?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yes, indeed. So was it just a matter for you of scaling it back, or
no,
did you have to adjust
learning how to act all over again. I think unless you can learn how to act all over again every day, you're not an actor. You've got to, I mean, if you're building a house, you don't just bricks, 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 bricks. You've got to practice all the time. And I love practice, don't you?
Do you? Yeah, okay, good.
I'm sure you do, yeah.
Sometimes I think, especially in Los Angeles, people lose sight of the process and they just want the result. They want to get the series, they want to get the fame, they want to get the role, and...
I couldn't have put it better, could you? Yes. I don't know how to answer that because I'm an old man and it doesn't really matter whether I get it or not. But, and also there's a lot of disagreement with that because I've seen and do see every day on television some of the best acting I've ever seen in my life. Mm-hmm. Now, they've either learnt it somewhere, or they can do it better, or they're much better than we were, or they have wonderful teachers on the set. I've been on quite a lot of those sets, but they're awfully good, don't you think? Mm-hmm. Most of the people in series today, terrific. Mm-hmm. I mean, God, Friends, you couldn't have a better acted piece going.
You did an appearance on Frasier, didn't you?
Yeah, well, he's a wonderful man, you know. The first rehearsal you go there and you read, Frasier this is, and he, the great man, Kelsey Grammer, he didn't read it, so I assumed when I first went there he'd read it. Then after about 2 days, I think you have about 5 days rehearsal, and about the 5th day he still hadn't even looked at the script at all. And then we did the show, and he came straight on, did the whole thing word for word. It was quite a sort of mind-boggling. But those series I find just magical. And him in particular, he just is a genius.
As your career began to unfold, as you're doing television up in Canada, what did you see as sort of your break point there? I mean, where did things start to open up, and where did you begin to know that you had a real career going?
Yeah, but that's a marvelous question. The point is, you see, you don't know until you find out. That's the only reason I stood up and said, in my 55th year, I learned how to breathe, and I call myself an actor. Let's think about it. Why couldn't we learn how to breathe properly when we're 18 or 19, when we go to drama school, or when we start? Not wait till 55 years old to find out how to breathe. Now I can breathe and send you out of the building any way you want, without, and all this as taut as a drum. 81.
So you never really know what the break is until after it's broken, so to speak. I mean,
Do you know, I don't think quite right. Isn't that interesting? When I got to Canada and I suddenly met these wonderful Plumbers and Shatners and many more, why they've all gone out of my head at this minute, and I realized how wonderfully they could act. I said, where did they learn to speak English? Can you imagine an Englishman? Which was why that remark came, oh, to be in England now that England's here. But I was liable to say, well, how did they learn to speak English? Well, it turns out that they come from Montreal, and their grandmother or somebody taught them an English accent. Because at that time, it's not important now, but at that time, to speak with an English accent was a must. I mean, you couldn't speak Shakespeare in a North Country accent or an American accent. You couldn't do that. You had to speak it like that. And consequently, you won't believe this, but it's true.
We're going to go to a couple of the questions here that the members have posed. Is it Theory, Siegel? Theory? Okay.
Sorry, Jerry? Yes.
Thierry.
Jerry.
Asks, how did you get the part of John Steed in the Avengers? And what other actors did you compete with for this role?
Yeah,
Could
that's
you
a very
describe
good
the
question.
process?
I didn't compete with any other actors. I've got most of my parts through sucking up, if you know what the expression is.
Okay. There you have it.
To the producer. He died only the other day. Wonderful man.
Is that right?
Yes.
Well, talk about the process. I mean, you know...
Process of what?
Of being cast.
Sidling up to somebody?
Well,
I'm not
you
going to
know,
tell you, for God's sake.
That's the second time he said that to me.
Depends
That's
what,
now the second time he said that. I'm going to get a complex here.
depends what they like to do.
Well, no, I mean, did they just offer you
No,
the
they
role?
didn't just. They did
Well-
it by degrees.
Well-
Oh, Patrick, will you be down there at 10 o'clock tomorrow? What for? Oh, well, I thought we might have a little conversation. Anyway, you know, one thing leads to another.
Right.
And if you're a woman, it's worse.
Right.
Down with your knickers. That's the quickest way to get a part. And I mean that. Unfortunately. Still the best way. What else would you like to do?
Wow. They didn't have you read for it or anything?
Read for what?
For the Avengers. Come on now.
Oh, for the Avengers.
Yeah.
Oh, the Avengers. Oh, no. No.
I know there's a lot of sucking up
No,
going
but this
on,
is
they had to
no.
read.
I
Come
did
on.
no sucking. This is a very important thing. I was a very important producer of television. I produced a television series about Sir Winston Churchill, called My Darling Son. What was it called? Say again. The Valiant Years, it was called, about Sir Winston Churchill. And how I got this job was nothing nefarious. I happened to know somebody. Anyway, this was a very important job because it was about Sir Winston Churchill. Nobody had ever made anything about it. And he wrote 4 books during the war, Sir Winston did. Everybody said, why didn't you make the real story, how he was so drunk, and how he was this, and how he was the other? I said, because we made, rather pompously, his 4 books about the Second World War. And I like to say that The Valiant Years, produced by me and directed by Johnny Schlesinger, who has only just died and is arguably one of the greatest film directors who've ever lived. He died just the other day in Palm Springs. Johnny Schlesinger and I, him particularly, made The Valiant Years, which was about the whole life at that particular time, and we're very, very proud of it. There you are.
So
The Valiant Years, remember it.
Yes. So by producing that that series, that's what led you to the Avengers. No?
Oh,
I'm getting confused now. This is my fault.
Well, I'm getting
Not yours.
confused because after that, I did something totally different. What did I do, Rupert? Went to Canada?
No, you went right after that. You literally ran into Sidney Newman.
Oh, yes, I ran into a Canadian, a very short Canadian called Sidney Newman, of immense distinction. And he founded the whole of the Canadian film industry, one of the most brilliant men I've ever met. And I ran into him in the street. He said, do you want to be in television? I said, no. I'm a producer now, I said rather pompously, because I was producing this show about Sir Winston Churchill. I thought I was cat's whiskers, and I had an office in the West End of London. No, I said. He said, well, how much do you get? Oh, I get $350 a week. We pay $6. What? That's how I got the
Television sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah. It did, I tell you.
So once you got the role, I mean, you know, how did you develop that character? That character of John Steed is an icon. I mean,
well, there was a
people look at it
wonderful man
still.
called Ian Henry, and he wouldn't mind me saying, because he's been dead long ago, of the infernal grape. You know that awful thing you put in your mouth too much of? And he drank a great deal. And I drank almost as much, but not quite as much. And he died. And so there were two of us in this show, and we called it, somebody called it, The Avengers. So we did this show, just two men. And then there was an actor's strike, or something happened. And we were on strike, must have been 3 months. And Sid, this actor friend of mine, either died or became a movie star, either one or the other. And
Closely related sometimes.
Yeah, when the strike was over, they came back and said, you know, we got an idea. What's the idea? We could have a woman. What do you mean by a woman? A woman! A woman from North Africa, the Mau Mau, all the time, when one white woman with babies split open from the navel downwards, killed by the Mau Mau. I said, yes. And she'll be a single woman. No, she could have been married, doesn't matter. But she's there and she's ready to cope with the world. No, you know, this sounds ordinary now, but I can assure you that when did I start that series?
61.
Say again?
1961.
Yeah, 61. It was fairly unusual to have a woman, yes, of energy on television, going out and doing things. There was that very tall actress, apart from her, practically nobody else. I've forgotten her name. But very few people went out, if you were a woman, and were, I'm a star. And we practically started that because we did a much more important thing, and the Americans ruined it. God bless you all. When you did the movie, there was a movie of the Avengers done by a man who shall not be mentioned anymore, because he had the misplaced American, I say it once more, who are liable to put, and I can be disputed on this, women on a pedestal. Not always. I think women are subdued a bit more nowadays. But in those days, the woman was always on the pedestal. I said, no, you can't do that. He said, but the show is about a woman. I said, no, it isn't. It's about two equal people. One male, one female. That's what life is all about, I hope.
Yeah. There was magic in that series.
Yes,
And the
yes.
chemistry between you and Diana Rigg.
Well, the girl
Oh, my
before
goodness.
was great to see. Anna Blackman was wonderful, beautiful, beautiful woman. But we did it on live television. And to do live television, which I'm sure you've all done at one time or another, you get on.
How many have done live television here? Only a couple.
But it's really scary, you know. You start, and I used to do them out here. They were called Playhouse 90.
Right.
And we would start this 90-minute film, can you believe it? At a studio around the corner here, live, and we were just paralyzed with fear. Oh,
Exciting though, isn't it?
not really. It's exciting. It's exciting to talk about, but
The Avengers went on for how many seasons? Was it?
oh,
11
well,
or
I did
12,
the
or-
Avengers for 13 years. I
13
ended up
years.
with probably the best television actress I've ever worked with ever, and ever likely to again, called Joanna Lumley, who in my opinion is one of the great actresses of all time, and also one of the great women. She is at the moment doing more for elephants, giraffes, animals in Africa, and all over. She's just an exceptional woman. And I was so proud to do this show. It's called The New Avengers, and there's a very nice cassette, and you can get it for Christmas. And
It's actually on DVD now too, isn't it?
yes, they're both on
yeah.
DVD, the whole of the original Avengers and the whole of the new Avengers. But Joe Lumley is a great person.
Did you do any of the commentary on the DVD versions? Did they ask you to provide
I
commentary?
don't think, they didn't ask me to do anything, no. I think they were very wise, really, because I can get awfully pompous and dull.
People will pay for that, though.
But they brought, well, no,
You know?
but what was more important, they brought them out, and some of them were awfully good, but particularly ones with Joanna Lumley. She's just great.
Kay Bernard asks, do you feel that the huge success of the Avengers prevented you from getting some types of roles later on? Were you typecast?
No, it didn't. Well, what is a typecast? I mean, I'm a 6-foot man of slight corpulence at the moment who's been able to speak reasonably well through education and training. And I've been an actor. An actor is an awfully important thing. I very rarely, if you turn round, I turn round to somebody now, I very much doubt there's anybody here who would stand up and say, yes, I'm an actor. It used to give me enormous pride when people said, well, what are you? What do you do? I said, I'm an actor. And almost their next, well, what's that? Because people didn't realize what acting was. It's a highly brilliant skill. It has to be learned. Talk to the real actors that we all know, the great actors. It's, I mean, God, it's, to me, a very distinguished skill.
Can one learn to be an actor if you don't have certain?
No, you've got to be an actor. And it's extraordinary. People say, well, you can't tell by looking. You can. If a man comes in, you can tell if he's an actor. You can't tell he's not an actor, but there's something, I don't know what it is. And also there's something looking, listening. Very few people ever listen to each other. And if you're an actor, if you don't listen, you're not an actor. There are many, many subliminals about acting, quite apart from getting the breath in the lower stomach, that you should know before you're an actor. But most important of all, you should look at somebody else and think, I wonder what they do at home. I wonder whether they're clean, whether they're dirty, whether they have relatives, whether they want to have children or don't have children, whether they're, say, to whatever. You've got to do all of that, and if possible, more, as the great ones, De Niro and poor bugger, I see he's got prostate cancer. All these boys, the great actors, of which, of course, he's probably the greatest at the moment, these people have. It's a very great, great skill, in my opinion. Ernest Hemingway, to hell with him, wonderful. But some of the actors I know, John Gielgud, I think I've got him on a tape here. I think he's here playing away. He's the great man. No, he's not on that one. But Sir John reading the Shakespeare sonnets. The Shakespeare sonnets probably mean nothing to you at all, and yet they probably mean everything to you. But the people who have not read the Shakespeare sonnets should get Sir John Gielgud reading them. And you think, that's what they meant.
So if one's really an actor, you won't let yourself become typecast. You'll keep expanding your skill set?
There isn't such a thing as a type, is there? It's extraordinary how...
in this town, they try to make it into that. I mean, you know, I agree with you.
They used to, but thank God, these new young actors are so marvelous. They do, I mean, God knows, let's take your women, let's take all the Friends lot, all those people. They can, as I say, that wonderful thing I did with that Friends actor, he just had to he just stood there, and I was sort of galvanized to do my very best because he was so wonderful. Never even looked at the script. So there's something about acting, which is something you can either do or you can't do. Now, you can get to do it better, but you've got to want to do it so much that you can't do anything else. I'm now 81. I started acting when I was 17. I'm not all that good, but I've been very successful.
You talked about part of your process being thinking beyond just what's on the written page and thinking about, is this person messy? You know, what kind of habits do they have?
Yes.
Is that the way you like to approach it?
Well, you say you. I wish to God I could say that I did that, but I look at a man there, I look at a man there, I look at a woman there, and I think what they do with their parts. I bet you they're marvelous in the thought and the introspection and the searching around and the looking at people, just looking at people. Any of these things, you can just sit, can't you, in a bar and just look at people, and it's wonderful, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful exploration of humanity and all the foibles of humanity, and not taking a stand and not taking a position, just enjoying. There's a human being, another human being. I look at you, I look at you. you look at me. Let's go on looking at each other and preferably talking to each other.
When you say not putting anything on it, you mean not passing judgment on who they are or thinking about...
Passing judgment is a terrible phrase. The only people who should pass judgment, in fact, I believe the people are, I think they're over in Iraq at the moment, aren't they? I think if you consider you can pass judgment, I suppose unless you're a judge, but then how many, are any of you a judge? No.
Played them on TV, but they've...
Well, and judging and the courts are getting very, I wish they were better, they were better. I wish all those official organs were better, The medical profession, I wish it was better. The legal profession has to be better, and very soon. It's good to be a farmer, as long as you know what you're doing.
And I hear that's hard to do these days, too.
I understand.
There's
yes.
water wars now going out there.
Oh, it's dreadful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But we're off topic now, aren't we?
Not at all, no. I was a farmer for years and years and
were
years.
you really?
I've milked more cows than you've had hot dinners.
Where were you a farmer? When did that come in? I missed that part.
When I was,
absent that day.
No, I was 17, 18.
When you
I
got,
was a farmer, a very good farmer too.
before you went to the war? Or
Oh yes,
yeah.
before I went to, just before, only just before. My mother came to me with 3 white feathers and said, "What are you doing? Milking these cows, doing these pigs." I said, "What are those?" "3 white feathers, you're a coward, go to war, go to war." My mother.
Yikes. Well, I'm kind of jumping all over the place here.
She was a good woman. Her favorite phrase to me on several occasions was, "Is she a lady, my dear?" If you know what that means.
Yes.
No, she came from the utter dredges of disgusting, muddy. "A lady, my dear. What the is a lady?"
I read somewhere that you actually designed the costuming for John Steed in the Avengers.
Yes, I did, but that was so easy because, well, my father used to dress like, no, I'm not dressed like it today, but my father and all this, they always had beautiful, and I don't know why we do it more of it now today, they had cravats, you know, wider than this and rounder, and a high waistcoat, and a beautiful pearl, real pearl, pin in the center of it. That's what first got me to thinking of those clothes. And then they said, "Oh, I know, I started with ordinary clothes like this." And they said, "But Patrick, this was on the Friday, you're so dull." Look, if you can't do anything or get any better by Tuesday, you're fired. So I went away and I thought, what's the most outrageous thing? And I got these curly rim bowler hats from the way I did all that sort of jazz and turned up with all this. I said, "Here I am." And they said, "You're in." What a lot of idiots people are.
But that bowler hat became, you know, a trademark. It really
well, it was a
became
curly bowler hat. Then somebody came, they used to have them with a straight brim. I said, "That's not," "Well, it's a bowler hat." I said, "No, it isn't. You iron them with a flat iron at the side and get a nice sort of thing on it, you know.
Did you wear those out in public? Or
Well, obviously not.
Well,
I mean,
just
don't be
asking.
ridiculous. This is playtime, dressing up, theater. In Piccadilly, what would they think?
Oh, my goodness. Let's see here. John A. says, enjoyed meeting you in La Jolla with your theatrical background. Which do you prefer, TV, theater, or film?
You say meeting in La Jolla. Do you go to that
Where's
theater?
John?
You go to the theater, do you?
No, I met you out in front of Sea Lion
Yeah.
about 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Have you been there
You
ever
remember that, right? Don't you? You remember, yeah.
Well, I do. You forget that face, for God's sake?
We both staggered across the street and bumped into one another.
You use the word stagger, I hope, advisedly. I haven't staggered for the last 25 years. I've been as sober as a judge, and I don't know many sober judges.
Actually, yeah, we
Well, thank you for saying that, but also that theater, the La Jolla Theater, is one of the best in the world, don't you think? I just love it. It was started by Greg Peck. I can call him Greg because he said to me, Patrick, we did a film called The Sea Wolves in the island of Goa. I have other stories about Goa, but I won't tell them now. And Greg Peck, as I like to call him, God bless and God rest his soul, and David Niven, who was indeed my cousin. Well, he told me apparently he wasn't my cousin, but his elder brother, Max, was in love with my mother for 8 years when we worked together. But I've forgotten what I was going to tell you. But anyway, there we go.
The La Jolla Playhouse, was there a connection
But
to that?
the La Jolla Playhouse, to me, is one of the best in the whole world. I mean, I just see, why can't people play more at the La? Or maybe I'm completely out of line, and because I haven't been there for 3 years. Is there a lot of good theater at La Jolla now? Do you happen to know? Or even at Laguna? I don't think there is even a theater at Laguna, is there? Still, does it work? Good? What about La Jolla? What about La Jolla now? Hope so, because there was a wonderful man. Well, Gordon Davidson became one of the top Broadway producers, didn't he? Gordon Davidson. He started. I met him the very first day. He asked me to be in the very first play in La Jolla. And I said, no, I come here on holiday. It must have been about 20 years ago. And he started that wonderful theater at La Jolla, which I think the standard's very high.
It sounds to me like you prefer the theater. Is that?
No, not true at all.
Okay.
The theater is awfully boring. One, you have to climb onto the bloody stage. Once you're on the stage and you have any sense of diverticulitis, which I have, the blood comes in not as fast as it should to the center of my brain, which is why I'm a bit peculiar. But on a stage, and the one particularly at La Jolla, is on a slight incline, and you think, oh, Jesus. So it's difficult to act a scene with that basis, if you get my meaning. That's right.
All right, well, then let me go about it this way. What does an actor learn from theater that's going to carry him or her over in their career?
Well, now, look, the gentleman at the back there, if I said, would he say, to be or not to be? That is the question. Did you hear me say that?
Yes.
Now say it to me.
To be or not to be, that is the question.
Very good.
Did you notice the emphasis on that? Which, of course, is quite accurate and right. But what I mean is, here I am. I could talk a lot quieter, of course. And I want to communicate with the gentleman in the middle at the very back. I'm hoping that you can hear every word in the pink shirt that I say? Good. That's what we should all do. We should think, I want to communicate without shouting with the person at the back of the room. Let's do it. It's nothing to do with theater. It's just to do with, I love the person in the pink shirt. I'd like to tell him I love him, or whatever. And we can all do that. But if you don't pronounce the consonants, they won't hear.
So you learn how to be heard and how to be seen by doing theater. What do you learn about building a character? What do you learn about sustaining?
You do that way before you get onto a stage. I mean, you know the best way to build character. You get a play, let's get any play, and you sit around like we are now. And I'm sure you all do this anyway. And you just talk about it, you talk about it, you talk about it. As I say, that's why I love those people like, well, the great actors now, who I think are the ones who are doing all the top series, quite honestly. I think they're the great actors going. And you sit around and talk about it.
And just let the material begin to inform you.
If I came on now, don't tell me when you're going to come on, just come on. I mean, that's what he does in Friends, that wonderful man. I mean, he's a great, great actor, Frazier. They're great actors. They just do it in a different way. As I say, I never saw him study a script ever. He probably had done it before he got there, but I'm in admiration for those people.
What about improvisation? Did you ever do any,
I hate improvisation, except in the schoolroom or in the drama school. If you can't improvise, don't call yourself an actor. I mean, if somebody said to you and I, will you get up now and do a scene about milking a cow and seeing how much milk you can get out, and then turn around and how many pigs there are and get them out of the slush. If you can't do that, having been told what to do, you shouldn't be an actor. I mean, you don't have to stand up and say, right, now I'm standing in front of the pigs. Now I'm going to do this. You don't do that. You just do it and get down your hands and knees and get in the mud and get the pigs out, poor little thing. But the tiny ones that get the mud over them so they can't breathe, poor little buggers, you know. Excuse my French, I'm sorry.
Was there ever a moment on stage or on camera where someone went up on their lines, either you or your partner, and you had to improvise?
My favorite one was a lovely lady called Dame Irene Vanbrugh. All the people in our community of Great Britain are Dame. The most famous Dame at the moment is my ex-leading lady, Dame Diana Rigg. Or as somebody said outside a stage door once on Broadway, Mr. Macnee, it's so good of you to sign these 200 autographs. How come that Miss Rigg is such a pig? I said, depends what you think of pigs, you know. Who am I to comment? I'm just saying that I like to give out to people. Other people like to retain. But probably Diana Rigg, Maggie Smith, Judi Dench, are arguably the three best English-speaking actresses in the world. It's only my opinion.
You started to tell me the story of somebody that you had to improvise with, Dame Irene.
Oh, Irene Vanbrugh, yes, but she was a famous old lady. And she had the wonderful gift of playing the scene with J.M. Barrie, was a very famous and lovely writer, Peter Pan and everything. But he wrote the most gorgeous little plays, which are still worth studying and looking at. And Dame Irene, who was the most distinguished actress at that time, I was only 20 or 23 or something. And we did this play somewhere in a hospital or wherever it was. And then she, you could tell she dried completely. She would walk over to the side and say, "Can you give me that, my dear?" The stage manager would give her the line. She'd come back and carry on with the scene. Now, perfection.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Ty asks, what's your favorite thing about acting? What is it about acting that drew you to this? I mean,
No, acting is hell, and we know that. I mean, if one could earn a living doing it any other way, one would. I prefer producing. I would love to be a director. I hate directors. Most directors are very nasty people indeed, and I think they'd all admit it. Actors are so lovely, they just get slaughtered. Actresses, poor little darlings, except for the strident, what's that wonderful English one, that one who sort of stomps about like a soldier, I forget her name now, Dame something or other. Anyway, I've acted with more of those god-awful people than you and I have had hot dinners. I've really, to be an actress of that stature, what is her name? Much more famous than all of the others. Anyway, can you remember her name, Rupert? No. No, Vanessa, she's lovely. Vanessa Redgrave is just adorable. I acted with Vanessa Redgrave when she was 17. Oh, but she came down from heaven. She's not an actress, she's just somebody from heaven. And so also was that wonderful Diana Rigg, came down from heaven and lighted on us, who were doing a very ordinary little show, and suddenly went dong, dong, and turned it into gossamer.
that's sweet. So you love it and you hate it, the profession of acting?
Well, most people who are in it must hate a lot of it because there's so much rejection, there's so much real plain poverty, there's so much plain humiliation, there's so much plain trial. The very few big successful actors, very, very few. Television has helped. In my day, we didn't have what they called television, or TV, I think it's called.
Right. Bud Watson says, from the short bio, it appears that you've been in a lot of rebel. Hold on here.
What would that mean?
There's a lot of old rebel in you at times?
An old what?
Somebody?
A little bit of a rebel.
A little bit of a rebel. Bud
I've
says
been
he's
a rebel since I was 14, yes, when my mother said I had to go away to do this, that, and the other. And then she said, well, as I say, the white feather story really started me. 3 white feathers, Patrick. You're not going to go and fight for your country? My mother. You learn early, baby. I was 18.
Was the choice to go into acting then a bit of a rebellion for you? I mean,
There was no choice at all. I started when I was in school, in an all-male school. You know, the old girls sent us all away to boarding school. So we had to do something. So I played the girls usually.
it's a gig. You know?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Ron Lynch asks, of all of your roles, which was the strangest?
I wonder what that would be, Rupert. Have you any idea? So I talked to my son because, say again. Oh, yes. Well, I do think the film of The Howling, incidentally, the cassette has just come out. I brought one. I don't know where I've... No, I did
Make
have
notes
it
of
in a
this,
little...
everybody.
I've left it in the car, haven't I, John? Yeah. But The Howling is probably one of the best horror films I've ever seen. I don't know whether you agree. And that wonderful man who directed it and the people in it. And I love being in it. And I did that about 10 years ago, I think.
J. Paul Moore asks, what role has eluded you that you wish you would have the opportunity to play?
Well, you'd always find, and I think it's awfully important, particularly when you're asked that question, you expect the person to say, well, I think I should have played so-and-so. Well, in my case, maybe Claudius in Hamlet, or I can think of any number. I've played so many interesting parts, incidentally, always exactly the same. But anyway, that's not But obviously, like everyone else who is not Hamlet, who doesn't want to play Hamlet better than anybody else? It's the greatest part ever written, ever, and I've only seen one. I've never seen a great Hamlet, ever. No.
Never.
Have you? Or that you considered great? No, think for a moment as to...
I'm feeling very on the spot here.
Yeah, well, you see, maybe none of you have seen Hamlet.
No,
I mean, I didn't mean that. What I mean is that a lot of people haven't seen Hamlet. It's the greatest play, by far, ever written, because it has so many facets to it, very few of which are ever really well brought out by actors, even in the most prestigious Old Vics and all that crap, you know. And, of course, Stratford, Ontario, the standard, except for Chris Plummer, is dreadful. And a lot of these regional theaters are dreadful. So let's get the standard, the general standard of acting, up higher. That's all I would ask. And there's nothing to do with me. I'm a very ordinary actor.
How about any actors that you wish you have had the opportunity to work with that you've not yet worked with?
Well, you see, I mean, Peter O'Toole, by this time, and I don't think it's any secret, he lost a little bit of his pancreas, wanted to go to Broadway in the play by George Bernard Shaw. What's that play with Henry Higgins? Pygmalion, right. This is after My Fair Lady, incidentally. And the old boy said, by this time he was beginning to wilt a bit. And I say this story with discretion and enormous admiration, because I think he is the greatest actor alive, just alive. And Peter, as I used to call him, as it seemed right, he called me Patrick as well. He said, Patrick, why don't you want to come to Broadway with me in Pygmalion and play, what's the name of that dull man in it, in Pygmalion, who isn't Henry Higgins?
Yeah,
Pickering, yeah. You don't want to play Pickering with me on Broadway? I said, no, I don't. And and he never spoke to me again after that at all. Ever. Anyway, that's life.
So if Peter called up, then you might consider, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's still alive, the old boy.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
They say the same about me.
That's a good thing, though, I think.
Not necessarily, no. You can get an awful lot of respect as long as you've got a short fear phone down to this world of what people say about you, you know. I'd love to have just died and hear what people say about me.
A couple other questions here that members have about the Avengers. Angela McEwen asks, did you ever have humorous outtakes or bloopers on the Avengers? Anything?
Well, what I loved about the Avengers was, one, this wonderful man, Brian Clemens. He was a man of extraordinary ability and talent and inspiration, and he had a lot of, not a lot, but a few other really exceptional people with him. Their ideas came out of nowhere. They were such lovely people. I couldn't have even dreamed. I said the words that they said, and so did Di Rigg. But the point is, they were the inspiration. They lived in little farmhouses in the middle of Bedfordshire. They had nothing to go on. They had a lot of awful ratty children. They did this, that, and the other, and they created Gossamer, in my opinion.
On the DVD that's being released, do they have any of those type of outtakes?
Do you know, somebody, I'm going to answer to them as well as you.
Okay, sure.
Somebody told me that yes, and I think somebody told me, Rupert, I know you haven't seen it yet, but I understand those outtakes on those Avengers. They're two big things. One is the Avengers, and the other is the new Avengers, about that size. And apparently the outtakes are stupendous. I don't know who they're with. I suppose some with me, but I mean, I believe it's terrific value. I'm not trying to get you to buy it because it's coming up for Christmas, but anyway.
Great. Virginia Montero asks, was there ever a reunion Avengers show? Did you ever get back, the cast get back together after it went off the air?
No, because by that time we must have, hopefully, all hated each other, I think. No, very interesting question. I see Di Rigg. I adore her.
That was the next question. Did you
Dave,
work with her again?
Oh, yes, Dame Diana. I did her show at one time. She's still the most gorgeous, darling, sweetheart alive. I love Diana. And I love my leading lady after that, Joe Lumley. Right. And I loved Honor Blackman. They were very, very fine, exceptional women, you know, would have done well against the Mau Mau. That's where the part came from, what was left after the Mau Mau had cut both of her children. Which I think is a good start. A woman of resilience who can manage to go on after that, and that was real. Yeah. The Mau Mau.
What do you know now about the business that you wish you would have known way back when?
Well, I think it's so much more exciting now. There wasn't even television in those days. You know, there was a few. We used to go and see great actors. I won't even bother to be with their names at this time. They were both men and women. But they came on a stage, just one person. Dame Mary Tempest was probably the most important. She was a woman of incredible beauty, and she was done up with, whatever we've ever saw pictures of Queen Mary, George V's wife. They had a big, what they called a toque hat, which was a thing like a small soup tureen, like that, and about 8 feathers and small flowers coming out of it. Then you'd have a bit of hair. Then you'd have a bit of face. Then you'd have an enormous collar like that. And you would go around. Then you'd have a dress which went straight down, of utter gossamer and beauty, and lots of folds under it. I think they very rarely washed. Anyway, that's beside the point. Those were the people I grew up with. Those and the pigs and the cows.
There's a lot of talk about what computer enhancement and computer-generated characters are going to do to the acting profession. Should actors be worried about the new technologies, or is this something?
In about 5 years, they won't need any actors at all.
That's what we're afraid of.
I'm not. I mean, what the hell, you know?
Is it a good thing, though? I mean, you know, the technological
What is a good
advances?
thing? Is God a good thing? I don't know. Is the war against this, that, and the other a good thing? I don't know what is a good thing anymore. I'll tell you what's a good thing. I hope to walk out of this room alive.
We're going to make sure that happens
You promise?
to the best of our ability. You gave people some practical advice here tonight. I mean, to know
I
about...
hope not.
No, you did. Yeah. Well, it was accidental maybe, but you did. Yeah, no. Yeah, you're just talking about, learning to breathe and learning to be able to project and learning, about observation.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can teach is that breath thing, which I did, because it was taught to me not by anyone to do with the theatre at all. As I say, and I repeat this, if 25 years earlier, when I was starting at the age of 20, somebody had taught me that, which a very famous ear, nose, and throat specialist in New York, and I was already playing sleuth and everything, taught me when I was 20, why can't people learn how to teach other people, if they want to be an actor, how to breathe? You can't be an actor if you can't breathe from here upwards. You can't be an actor. You've got to develop every single facet of every tiny bit of flesh, fiber, hairline, voice, inside, outside, every bit, and then spill it out in front of an audience so they go, wow. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with us
It's a pleasure.
tonight.
Pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Terrific.